Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me today. I am Jim Coppinger with Zentech Consultants, and I want to welcome you all to our Site and Visibility Controls in Civil 3D webinar today. So before we get into the presentation, I just wanted to touch on a few housekeeping items. Because this is a public forum, I do keep all the attendees' microphones, telephones muted throughout. But if you guys take a look at your GoToWebinar control panel there, you see that there's a chat box and a question box. If you guys have any questions or concerns throughout the presentation, just type them into the chat box. I'm not going to stop what I'm doing to answer in real time here today, but I have allowed for a question and answer session at the end here. I'll leave a little bit of time at the end so I can answer whatever questions come in. So please just type in whatever your thoughts are as we go. All right. Other than that, I think we are good to go ahead and jump into today's presentation, which I will try to move along. Hopefully, won't take the entire time that we have slotted. I try to keep it quick. I know you guys are busy, right, and have billable jobs to get back to. So with that, let's go ahead and move on. All right, so for those of you who haven't worked with us before, we're Zentech Consultants, and we work in the architecture, engineering, construction community, really helping all of our clients develop and implement and optimize the software that they already have and help them configure and customize it to their own specific needs. And we do just a myriad of different software packages and systems. And we hope that you guys will take a few minutes and hit our website, zentechconsultants.net, and see all the good things that we have to offer for you. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into today's presentation. So again, we're talking today about site and visibility controls in Civil 3D. And these are our analysis tools. And they're analysis tools that are very often overlooked, and they're very simple to use. They're very basic. But what they do is they provide a lot of information in a graphic format that goes beyond basic, roadway corridor speed and K-value passing site controls. They kind of, I think, bring a little bit more in terms of realistic analysis to your roadway design and particularly intersections, right? And we're going to talk about three primary features here today. We're going to talk about checking your site distance, right, using point-to-point. Right? And point-to-point site is great. It's when you pick a point where you are and then say, what could I see from that point? Okay. And we're going to talk about calculating site distances along a corridor. And what that does is it follows your corridor, your Civil 3D developed corridor, and it goes around your horizontal and vertical curves, and it tells you where you have clear visual paths or where visualization is going to be blocked for any oncoming traffic. Okay, so that's what that does. And the last one we're talking about is checking the visual zone of influence. And that's kind of the reverse of the point-to-point. What that does is you pick an object or a location, and you're going to have Civil 3D calculate how far away can people see that object. Okay, and they're all really, really useful visual tools, and they all work together in one single item that really will really help you pin down your design. That I've just seen time and time again over the years of working in this industry where maybe, like I said, your corridor meets, or your K values, it's got the correct turn radiuses, you've done all of the design speed criteria, but in reality, when a car pulls up to the intersection, he can't see what's coming down the other way. So if you ever run into those bad intersections, and as a designer you're going, who designed this thing? I can't even see who's coming down the road. These tools will help you to avoid that, so that people aren't looking at your designs going, who designed this? So that's what we want to avoid, right? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump over to Civil 3D. And you'll see that what I have here is just it's pretty simple. It's just a basic T intersection, right, with a defined surface. And you see I've got a profile built, right, for this setup. And just to show you real quick, it's just a three-dimensional surface. So I'm just going to pop this open into my object viewer here. Let me drag that up onto the screen so you can see what we're looking at. And you can see that we've got a three-dimensional roadway, right? You can see where it dips and it rises, right? So it's one with a pretty hefty hill working through here. So we've got, a low point, and then it comes up a pretty big hill working its way up, right, past the intersection, right? So fully defined Civil 3D corridor, nothing too unusual about that, right? And this is usually where most people kind of stop their design. They say, oh, it's good. We've got it. The corridor works. I'm done. I've got my grading, I got my surface built, I'm finished. Well, what I really like to do in this case is I recommend you guys hit the Analyze tab in Civil 3D, and we're going to work with these three tools under the Visibility Check drop down. This is all we're working with today. All right, we're just going to go through these. So let's start with point-to-point. And like I said, you know, the point-to-point is it's a tool that helps you do a sight distance check, right? For example, maybe at a a high risk spot, right? Maybe at at the intersection where your cars pull up, you need to see how far away that they can see traffic coming down this hill, right? And it's a very easy tool to use. We're going to go in, we're just going to use point-to-point. Right? And it just asks you to pick a surface, right? And I can either pick a surface through a dialog or I can select it on screen. I'm going to use my corridor surface. And it asks you for your eye height, which is normally, it can be really anything. If you need to see the visualization from you standing on the sidewalk, you can do that. A very common use of this, though, is for, like I said, traffic guides. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to assume there's a car going to be pulling up to this intersection. He's coming out of the side road, and he needs to be able to see up and downstream, right? See where the oncoming traffic is. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and set for a standard car height. I'm going to set that for 3.5 feet. All right, and the location of the eye, I'm going to say, look, he's pulling up right to the stop sign right here. All right, and you see that, right? It's going to ask me for a height of target. Now, if you're trying to see, can I see a specific sign or something, right? A sign that's 30 foot high over here, you can do that. But normally, like I said, very often I'll go ahead and put 3.5 again so that I can see other cars. Right, so I'm going to go into the roadway and see if I can see other cars at that standard 3.5 height. Okay, now it's asking for the location of the target. And you see that what it does is it creates a series of arrows from here. So you can go to different locations, see what you can and can't see. And you see when I get to a certain point over here, it's green. Then I'll get to a point where, now it turns to red. I won't be able to see anything 3.5 feet over there. And like I said, normally what you'll do is you pull this down your roadway. And you see that as I go here, this is going uphill. And you see that I'm going to hit a point, right, where I'm green, I'm good, and then I'm eventually going to hit a spot, right about 625 or so. See how I convert? Let me just zoom in here, see I'm good, and then right about 625, I'm no longer good. So I can see up to here, right? And you see what's nice here is that it actually allows you to continue putting more. So you see that once I go past there, then it's no good. But on the other side of the road, well, I can see further, right, down this side of the road. So you see I'm good I can see traffic going away from me out to there, and then it turns bad once I get out to about there. There we go. For some reason, there we go. Okay, and you see I can continue in the other direction, and you can see that I can look at oncoming traffic. You can see that this is a pretty straight, flat road. Well, I can see oncoming traffic all the way to the end of the roadway, no problem there. Okay. So I've got a very open space where I can actually go in and see all of those objects, and I can see exactly where I switch from good to bad, right? Where my visualization is, right? So it's a very simple thing. And these are all a single block, a single item put under one layer, right? So that you can isolate and turn it on and off and do whatever you need, or even, go back in after the fact and erase it, right? So it's using your point-to-point structures. It just it tells you what you can see from a given location, right? Now, the next one that I'm going to work with here is the zone of visual influence, right? And this is kind of the reverse of your point-to-point structure. The zone of visual influence lets you pick a certain item, whether it be a stoplight, which is very common. I'll probably do that as an example. Or even if there's a sign, maybe your client wants to know, hey, how far away can people see this, very expensive sign that I built for my new shopping center. I want them to see it from 100 miles away, right? And this is where you can tell how far away can people see that, right? So in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, okay, let's say we've got a stoplight here at the center of the intersection, and I want to know, how far away can people see it, right? So I'm going to go and I'm going to use a zone of visual influence, right? And again, same thing. I'm just going to pick my surface. In this case, I'm going to use the corridor surface. And it says specify the location of the object. This is the object, the item that you need people to be able to see. Okay, this is not you. This is the item you need them to see. So it's the reverse. So I'm just going to go up here right into the center of the intersection. Say, look, I've got a traffic light that is right here at the center. Okay, and it says specify the height of the object. How high up in the air is it? Right? I'll say it's 22 feet up. Okay, and then you see it gives you a circle, a radius. How far away, right, do you need people to see it? Now I can drag it out if I want to do like the whole road and see where they could see that from. Or maybe, right, the local ordinance says, hey, people have to be able to see that traffic light, right, within 500 feet. Right? Actually, no, I'll bring it down a little bit because it's a little bit large for this. I'll bring it down to 300 feet, right? Within 300 feet. So I'm just going to put in a 300-foot radius, right? And you see that what it does, it calculates out, right? And you can see it color codes this in. And you can see I've got 3 different colors in in this area. See, I've got some red areas, some green areas, some yellow areas. And if I had gone out to the 500 feet, you'd have seen some other red areas back here. I cut it a little bit short there. Right? And what those do, they tell you whether or not the entirety of this object can be seen. So in these green areas, as people are pulling up here, right, on this side, right, that means that the entire height of the object, they can see that at 22 feet, they can see the entire light, okay? In these other areas, the object is partially visible, right? Meaning that they're within kind of a zone distance, right? That as they come up, right, it starts to cut it off, right? So in other words, if we had, I'll just show you, the light up there, right? What that means is that, if here's your road underneath, right? As you get closer, right, to where my crosshairs are here, right, you might not be able to see the whole thing because you're moving too close. That's why you start to see here. Okay, at the slope that I'm at here, I'm coming down a sharp hill. Okay, so once I get there, I'm either at this point, either above, and I'm only seeing a portion of this because I'm probably 25 feet up, and this is only at 22 feet. Okay, so I'm kind of seeing the top of it, but not the bottom. Right, and the reverse here, I'm seeing the bottom and probably not the top because I'm too close. Okay, so it gives you an idea how far out you can actively see those individual objects, right? So it's a great way to be able to work, and it's a very, very simple tool. Oh, and accidentally I erased the surface there, which I didn't mean to, which is why this is redoing and remodeling my corridor, right? Which is not what I wanted it to do, but I was just trying to erase the line and I erased the surface. I'm just going to undo that. I just meant to erase the line in the circle, right? So the last one that I wanted to show you guys, right? And it is the, and again, the thing with this is that the visual zone of influence, right? If we kind of look at this in the object viewer, you'll see that that is actually being brought up. It's not a 3D object. You see, it's a 2D area. It's showing, you see it down below, right? You can see how it's well below what's going on there. Okay, so you can see it brings it down to kind of a 2D plane so that you can show it in plans. Right? And then again, same thing. When you're done, you can just go ahead and erase that, right? And clear out your drawing. So it's kind of, each area, each color area, the red, the green, right? You see each of those are all individual hatch areas really that it just puts in place to show you where your visual areas are. And the last one that we would talk about, which is, very often the most important really in terms of road design, right, is the idea of checking your sight distance, right? And what this does is it's going to analyze your sight distance along the entire length or to a certain section, right, that you put in of your corridor, so that it really primarily comes into play around horizontal curves, right? The idea being that if you're driving along this road, how far away, as I'm coming around this curve, when will I be able to see the oncoming traffic, and when will they be able to see me? Which areas are blocked, right? And I want to be able to tell exactly when those match up. Okay, right? So that's the key. Right, so with this, I'm going to go into the check my sight distance, right? And it's going to bring up a dialog box. Now you can do this in two ways. You can do it with a feature line or a polyline. So if you had like an unusual path, you want to check like a walking path or something, or you absolutely can. Normally with this, I use an alignment and a profile. Right, so I'm going to use sample road, which is this main roadway we have here. Right, and I'm going to use the design profile, right, which is the proposed center line of road. Okay, so it's going to follow that, and I'm going to tie it to use the corridor's surface. So I'm going to follow the alignment and profile down the center of the road and look, right, like I'm driving along the finished corridor surface, so I can see how far away I can see these turns. Now I can do this from the beginning of the road to the end of the road, right? But maybe, I look at this road and I say, hey, you know what? Down here, I know you can't quite see it at my zoom level, but around station 900 from past this intersection, it's remember when we saw it's a very straight, flat road. I know that I'm going to be able to see, with no problem there's no curves, right? So maybe I don't need to do the whole road. Maybe I just want to go to station 900, right? Or I can use one of these to pick a point. So I only need to go up to this point, right? My check interval, it's going to check visual distances every 20 feet, okay? I can change that if I need to, right? And you can work your way here through kind of a wizard, right? You go to the next one, and here's where you can set your controls. What is your local or your AASHTO determined minimum sight distance, right? What's the eye height of the car, right? Offset, if you want to offset, 4 feet to the center of the lane, right? You can set those, right? The target height, right? You see in this case it's set for that. I'll set that for a 3.5 as well, right? To see another car, right? And I can do again an offset left to right, right? And then at the end here, you see that I have the ability to set the display, and it shows you right? Visible sight lines will be shown in kind of in, the green ones, right? And you can set a layer for those. Obstructed sight lines, obstructed eye paths, things that are going to block, right? Totally obstructed areas that you just can't see, a line for your eye path, okay? So you can change all of these different setups, right? So if I go in and say, look, I want to go in and change the layer for the I'm just going to grab a red layer here, right? For the obstructed lines, right? And I'll set the visible ones. I don't know, I'll put those on like I'm just grabbing a green color. Okay, so you see you can change the layers for those. You can use different hatch patterns, right, for any obstructed areas. Right now it's putting it as like solid fills. You can also create in a text file, a site analysis report. Right? I can go in and I can pick where I want to save it, so it'll actually write out a report as, an XML or an XSL file, or even as a text file. Right? I can browse that out, save it as a text file, right, to wherever I need it to be. If I need to include that in a report, I'm just going to uncheck that for right now. Right, and just go ahead and say finish. I'm just going to let it calculate. And you see it checks the rows. And now you can actually see it's showing me, right? You see in red the obstructed areas, right? And I can actually tell where this is, where I have issues. And what's nice about these, right? So you can see that up here, I'm fine. My sight lines, here are the green lines, right? It shows you what you can see from up here. You see that I can see from this point all the way out to here, right? But that I actually have some obstructed sight lines coming the other way, right? You follow? So it starts here. So as I start here, I can see all the way up. But then once I pass this point, the hill over here blocks this visibility. Right? And you can actually see those, that these are done, unlike the other objects. I'll just put in the obstructed one. I'll just bring that up as well. I'm going to bring that up as part of my, I'll just grab them all just to show it into my object viewer here. Right? That those are actual three-dimensional objects, right? So that as I go in and I tilt up, you see that those are actually up here, so you can actually begin to see, right, from a visualization point. If you can turn and say, oh, okay, you can actually follow the road and say, oh, I see what's happening. Okay, yeah, at this point, right, you can see right from here, right, just move to where you want to be. Here, you can see this is all blocked. That's blocking my vision. You can start to see by following the road. I can see traffic moving up the hill there with no problem. I can see up to there, but down here below in the dip, right, my visualization is going to be blocked. I'm going to miss traffic as I'm coming over this hill. I'm not going to see cars that are in that dip right here. Okay, as I go over the hill, right, you'll start to see again, same thing, right? As you look from here, you can see, oh yeah, there are areas. Yep, you can see that the edge of the road is going to block my sight. As I come over that hill, I'm not going to be able to see what's beyond, right? As I'm traveling over this hill. Once I'm past the hill, right, then I get, I can start to see items and so on. So that's what it does for you. It gives you that great structure that you can work with those, right? And again, it'll actually output with the actual stations and visualization links, right, into that text report. Okay, so they're really simple tools, very, very easy to use, right? And it's just 3 basic tools, but they get ignored a lot in the roadway and corridor design field, right? And it's really just a fantastic double check for you to just be able to look at your corridor, look at your intersections, and make sure that everything is going to work the way that you really wanted it to work, right? So that's pretty much what I wanted to show you here in terms of those tools. And I'm going to jump back here to my little PowerPoint presentation. All right, and take a minute here to answer some questions. I did get a couple of questions in. I got a question from Brianna, who asked, do these tools all work in 3D, or do they and do they adjust per the surfaces? I think what you're asking is are they all calculating based on the 3D surface? And Brianna, let me know if that's not what you meant. And the answer is yes. Even the ones that are down in the 2D plane for display, right, like the zone of visual influence, they do take into account the 3-dimensional rise and fall of your corridor, even if they're not being drawn as 3D objects on your plan. I think that's what you were asking. Okay. And I got a question from Danny. Can you make a table of the different areas? Yes. I mean, obviously, I just showed you can do it definitely with the sight lines. Right, it automatically generates a report like I showed, but if you get into like the zones of visual influence and you want to see the areas, each of those items are just hatch patterns, as I showed you, and each one you can easily pull the area and have it label the area of the hatch pattern, right, and then pull those out to a table, right? It's using some basic AutoCAD labeling tools and Civil 3D labeling tools to get that. All right, but yeah, each of those is just a hatched in area. You can just pull the outline and label those. Okay. I don't believe it has an automatic table for the zone of visual influence data. And I got one more question here from Eric. Do the tools update when the plan surface is or the corridor is rebuilt? No, actually they don't. All right, and that's actually a really great question. And I've had people say, well, that's silly. Why would it do that? It should update. It's one of those moments where you say it's not a bug, it's a design feature. It was designed that way for a reason. All right. The idea is that you can keep the original layout, right? You can show and keep what the original visual zone of influence is, put it on a layer. You can keep the original sight lines, put it on a layer. Then you can show and compare, like, hey, here's where it was versus here's where it is with the new design, right? And they're so quick and easy to use that it doesn't necessarily have to update, Eric. You can, in just a few seconds, you can do a whole new set, leave the old ones on, turn that layer off so that you can do comparisons side by side. Okay, so that's the idea. All right, and I think that's all the questions that I have. All right, so other than that, I hope you guys got some good information today, a little something to help you with your designs. All right, and I want to point out to you guys that we also do, and I am the host of, one of the hosts anyway, of the Cattle Call podcast. We are available, and we are a weekly podcast on all things CAD and design related. You can pick us up on all the major listening services, or you can catch it through our website. It's zentechconsultants.net. Right, and I also want to encourage all you guys to visit our Civil Engineering Hub. It is a subscription-based site where we have thousands of hours of civil and survey training videos that you can watch on demand, all very heavily Civil 3D focused. We've got tips and tricks and regular updates and blogs and practical application tools and white papers and networking and just all kinds of great things. You can catch us at zentechcivilhub.learnworlds.com, or again, you can just catch it off of our primary website. Right. Other than that, I want to thank you guys for joining today. If you have any questions or anything that you want to talk to us about in terms of Civil 3D or any other technology, or maybe you want to have a little bit more in-depth training or discussion on the tools we talked about today, you can just reach out to us at any of the contact information up there on your screen. Other than that, I want to thank you guys for joining us today. Hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I hope we get to work together again soon. Bye-bye.